Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second round of our Lunch In series. So, everybody, grab your sandwich, grab your drink, whatever you're going to have, sit at the table, join us. We're going to meet a couple more candidates from the Idaho Falls area. Now, this, just so you know who sponsors this and who's made this all possible. First of all, IE Productions, which we really appreciate here in Idaho Falls. Also, the Idaho Falls City Club, the Greater Idaho Falls Chamber of Commerce, Greater Idaho Falls Realtor Association. And so, because the candidates cannot have forums like City Club would normally have a lunch forum and everybody would come to it that was interested. Can't do that. The candidates can't go door to door. This is the oddest campaign I've ever experienced, and I've been around for a long time. So we're doing, Plan B, and Plan B is to do it this way on the internet. And we've done it once before. It worked out pretty well. So I hope by the end of this hour, you're going to know today's candidates much better. And they are, let me kind of describe the scene here. We have to be 6 feet apart, right? And we all are in the IE studios. And so to my left is Marco Erickson, and he's 6 feet away from me, and he's turned sideways, so he's breathing that direction. And to the right of me is Brian Zollinger. He's the incumbent. Same thing. He's a good 6 feet away from me. He is turned away from me and looking towards his camera. And never the twain shall meet, I guess. So that's how it sets up. You'll probably never see a three shot, where you see all three of us together. That's not going to happen. But we are all at least in the same room, and we will try and get all your questions answered today. I represent the City Club, Idaho Falls City Club. I'm on the board of that. And of course, we really try to promote civil dialogue, civil discourse. And they've been teasing me here that if they get out of line, I can't reach them. I throw a pen at them, I guess, to shush them up because I can't get to them any other way. And they can't see my face because I'm actually sitting about 6 feet in front of them. So they are behind me and to the side. I just want to give you the visual. The format's really simple. They're going to open up with a 3-minute self-talk, kind of explain who they are and where they come from and what their background is. And then we have this list of questions that you, the viewers and or realtors and Idaho Falls City Club people have sent in. So I will follow the questions on that list. If I don't think that they've answered the question, I'll ask them again to try to get to an answer for you. So there will be follow-up questions from me. After the question and answer, probably about 10 to 1, 8 to 1 or whatever, we'll have closing statements. And again, they'll have 3 minutes to wrap up the day. And so let's just get started. It's a fun and unique way to do politics, folks. So I want to start with the candidate that many of us know a little bit better simply because he's been in office. And Brian Zollinger, the disadvantage to you is it's easier to pick on someone that's been in office because they have a history. They have a voting history. But I'm going to let you go ahead and start this program off and let people know in 3 minutes about yourself.
Thank you, Carol. I appreciate the question. First of all, I'd like to thank the Chamber of Commerce and Idaho Falls Realtors and the Idaho Falls City Club for hosting this forum. It's definitely unique. This is an interesting thing, not being able to look at Carol and Marco and see reactions and be able to smile and laugh together. But I appreciate the forum, and this is amazing to have the opportunity to speak with the voters of Idaho Falls. Like Carol said, I am the incumbent. I have served in this role for 4 years. I've thoroughly enjoyed my role. I'm a fifth-generation Idahoan, born and raised in Salem, Idaho, which is just outside of Rexburg. Most of us in this area know, but when I get to Boise, nobody ever knows where Salem is. I'm married. I have 5 school-aged children, 2 young teenagers, and then 3 elementary school-aged children. By practice, I'm an attorney. I practice a broad range of legal issues, basically whatever comes through the door. I've enjoyed that. Growing up, politics always fascinated me. Growing up, I remember as a young child watching Ronald Reagan. Obviously, it was during the Berlin Wall times, and I was just fascinated watching him. Some of my heroes growing up, I remember a gentleman by the name of Ezra Taft Benson, who was the Secretary of Ag for years and years, and in just watching his passion for the Constitution of the United States. And I developed a passion similar to that, and I've devoted my entire life to studying the Constitution, the Founding Fathers, the principles that make this country and this state great. And so I always had a desire to protect those constitutional rights and our freedoms and liberties. Being a father of 5 children, I've been deeply concerned about education. So about 8 years ago, I ran for the Idaho Falls School Board. I won and was elected and served a term on the Idaho Falls District 91 School Board because I wanted to be able to be involved and to keep, we have some of the best teachers and administrators in the state of Idaho in this community. And so I was concerned, but I wanted to be involved and help out any way I could. During my time on the school board, I realized that there's so many federal and state mandates on our educators. I wanted to go swim upstream, so to say, and be able to help at a higher level to protect these rights, to bring autonomy back to our communities, and really stand up for the rights of citizens, the things that make Idaho a great place to live, these freedoms and values. So that's the reason I ran. That's the reason I'm running again. And I appreciate this forum, and that's me in a nutshell.
Very good. Thank you so much, Brian. And Marco, you are new to the game for many of us, so please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, thank you for the introduction. I am Marco Erickson, and I am running for the representative in District 33B. I am not a politician by background and by trade, and I officially did not study like Mr. Zollinger did most of my life. I spent my life dedicated to public service since I was very little. And here in Idaho Falls in the last year, I've been involved in over 40 direct service projects just from our community. In fact, it was interesting just talking to Carol a little while ago. One of the ones she's involved with, I was involved with here in Idaho Falls. We didn't know that about each other, but I'm constantly involved in that because I care about people so deeply. I had served as a mental health professional right when I got out of college. My wife and I moved to Idaho Falls and bought our first home. And I served in this area for 14 years, serving patients in the Medicaid population sector. And then throughout my life, the reason what made me so interested in serving people was when I was a very young boy myself, my family struggled with addictions. And I got to witness firsthand what that does to families and the devastation it brings. And so as a person that went through that, I elected early on, I was about age 8 when my father passed away from drunk driving. I elected to serve my public and to help make families live a better life and be able to be happier. And luckily, there were amazing teachers along that journey when other people would have tossed me aside or thought that because of my family's background I wouldn't be good enough. There were amazing teachers there like Miss Counts and Miss Miller and Miss Latham, just amazing teachers that had a belief in me and a faith in me. And they gave me the confidence to do something more with myself, and they sent me to leadership trainings. And those kind of things allowed me to become strong. And that's why I support educators so much, not just because they made a difference for me, because they do it every single day. And there's hundreds and hundreds of stories like that lead to us having a better outcome in life. I am a very passionate person. As a dad, I love my family. I'm so lucky to be blessed to have a wife of 18 years and 5 children. And I spend a lot of my time with them doing fun things, recreational things all over Idaho Falls, the whole area. We travel a lot. We do a lot of fun things together as a family. I am very blessed to support educators and the future of Idaho. And I think it's important that we put a lot of energy into college and career technical education. It's vital for our community and what we have here, especially with small businesses and the INL. Those are things I really want to see happen, and I really want to continue my work as I do right now with at-risk youth and be innovative and see how we can make a difference in the lives of youth. So I appreciate your time and appreciate your effort to give me this opportunity to run for this office. Thank you.
So at this point, you're tied 5-5 kids. So I think that's marvelous. Congratulations to both of you. The way I'm going to probably do this is whoever spoke last will then take the next question and ping pong. So somebody gets to answer it first each time, take turns being the first one to respond. And so I will keep the mic there on you, Marco, and ask you an easy softball question to get you started. How would you describe your political ideology?
Wow, interesting. My political ideology, I'm just a conservative Republican. I love to do what I need to do to serve the public's interest and the best interest. I'm a very good listener. So as a person, I want to support education, I want to support small businesses, and I want to support things that affect our people in the best way that I can every day. And that includes listening to my constituents, not being beholden to any special interest groups at all. My focus is always on the people. And that's really my philosophy. I'm not really a politician. Again, I don't always have the greatest answers, but I have the ability to listen very strongly. My training has been in stuff like motivational interviewing, specifically to listen to people, and that's what I'm good at. And I think I can represent the voice of the people very well.
And Brian, your turn.
I would describe my political ideology as driven by family. I don't consider myself a politician either. You know, I've been in this role for 4 years, and I'm in this role because I'm a husband and a father. I love the family. I personally think the family is the answer to everything. Along those lines, I believe our founding fathers were inspired when they created the Constitution of the United States, the Declaration of Rights. All of those rights I hold dearly. I'm a conservative Republican. And I believe in the Republican platform, both state and national Republican platforms. And my ideology follows those platforms closely. My voting record has always aligned with both the state and the national Republican platforms. And so that drives my ideology, wanting to protect the freedoms and the liberties that that are God-given, that are protected through our Constitution.
Thank you, Brian. And then you'll get to be next, or first on this next question. The governor just an hour ago at 11 o'clock held his town hall meeting or press conference or whatever, talking about COVID-19. So that's the soul of our existence these days, is dealing with this virus. So I'll be the first to admit I didn't get to hear it because I was driving here for this debate. But as far as extending the order, the stay-at-home order, at least until the end of April and now maybe longer, Brian, you first. How do you feel about it?
I've been generally supportive of Governor Little's efforts to protect the citizens. I think it's really important in these precarious times that we protect the lives of our citizens. I would like to see businesses opened up as quickly as possible. And I think I trust the individuals and the businesses more than I typically trust government. Before this all hit, you would go to the mall in Boise. I was over in Boise, and the mall was becoming emptier and empty. It was almost completely empty before the stay-at-home order. So I appreciate the role the governor is playing in educating the people, getting the message out about social distancing, sanitizing, face masks. And I believe it's time businesses open up, following those guidelines of social distancing and making sure. And I believe businesses, I trust business to keep their consumers safe. A business that's not doing that is not going to stay in business. So I would like to see businesses be opened up. I'm supportive of the governor to continue to remind people to practice these things, safe social distancing and those things to keep people safe.
Brian, I'm going to grant myself a follow-up. Everybody wants businesses to open up, but when do you want businesses to open up?
I want businesses to open up right now.
Tomorrow?
Tomorrow, as long as they follow those guidelines to keep their customers safe, keep the 6 feet apart. Businesses have it within their purview to require face masks and social distancing. And so I talk to the citizens of this community, the business owners, and there are businesses that are very hard hit. So I think it needs to open up right away as long as people are practicing those social distances things. And I trust businesses and individuals to do that.
To have the rules.
Yeah.
To set up the rules. All right then, Marco, it's your turn.
I support the governor and all that he did 100%. I have a background in working in public health, and I've been on the epidemiological teams directly, and I understand a lot that goes into the work. It's very difficult. It's a very difficult topic that's come across, and in a lot of these cases, we've never seen anything like this before. But when we do, we know that it can be very dangerous for our population. And so what the governor is doing is the right call. Our public health districts are following that. They know what's best. Their epidemiological teams are on top of these topics every single day, and they are making very good recommendations. And that's the exact same recommendations I would follow as well. I know it's very extreme and it's very hard for people. I've been in those circumstances many times in my life, and I understand that very well, and that's exactly where I stand on that.
And a definition of epidemiologist for anyone that might not know?
There are people who study these kind of outbreaks very strong, and they understand the science behind the spread of diseases.
Okay, and you say you have a background in that.
I have been on the epidemiological work group teams, yes.
Yes, and just one more follow-up. When would you open? Brian would open tomorrow and trust the people. When would you open?
I trust the people very much so, but I also believe that we need to follow these orders, and it's hard for us, but we need to do what we've been recommended to do from our federal government, FEMA. A lot of these people, including the Center for Disease Control, they really know what they're doing. And if you look at the charts and you pay attention to how fast this stuff can spread, I would rather not see my family affected and die from this disease.
Next question then is on you. There will be a rally on Saturday, we understand, where Janice McGeehan, our Lieutenant Governor, will be the lead speaker. And I think it's going to be in Rexburg, although I didn't quite pin down where it was going to be held. Will you be attending the rally on Saturday?
I would not be seen at a rally of that sort, no. In fact, I find that very disturbing that people that are extremists like that are going to be putting themselves and other people at risk. I would not condone that kind of behavior, and so I definitely will not be present in that setting.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, I really respect the First Amendment rights of the people to gather and to speak their mind and to protest. So I respect the values of those people that are going to take their time to show that their disenfranchisement with what's going on and the restriction of constitutional liberties. Personally, I probably won't make it. I have, a family of 5, and we're going to spend time together. And I think those people that are attending are probably going to wear face masks and respect the social distancing requirements if they feel it's necessary for their own personal health and safety. So I fully support every American to protest. We see whether it's Democrat or Republican, I think it's important for the people to be able to get out and express their point of view. The government is there to protect the people, and the government works for the people. So if people are dissatisfied with that, they need to be out there making their voice known. Perhaps you choose to do an email to Governor Little or a phone call. But I do respect the rights of those people to do it. If I had the chance, if my constituents are going to be there and would like to talk, I would have maybe made the trip up, but I'm going to spend time with my family, so I probably won't be there either.
Thank you very much. Next question, Brian, you get to start this time. The Idaho Freedom Foundation Index gave you a 95%. That's one of its highest scores ever. So how do you feel about the grading system?
I appreciate the Idaho Freedom Foundation and what they do for the people. They provide a metric. They score these bills on the same criteria every time. If people will notice, there's very few organizations that keep the voters, make sure that politicians are keeping their promises to the voters. They're one of the few. The other one, if you'll notice, the American Conservative Union, the most respected Republican organization in the country, the group that holds CPAC every year, where Donald Trump spoke this year, their rating system is almost identical to the Idaho Freedom Foundation's, and they rate a lot of bills as well. You can go to their website and see. So I scored about that same percent on both, and I'm really proud of my conservative voting record and the fact that I've kept every promise I made. I campaign as a conservative Republican. I follow the Republican platform. Both the Freedom Foundation and the American Conservative Union rankings follow closely with the National Republican platform and the State of Idaho platform. So I'm proud to follow those and receive those high marks.
And to you, Marco.
I do not view their marks as a high mark. I think it's more like an obedience score is what I would call that. And I don't mean to poke fun at my opponent, but that's exactly what it appears to me. I'm just not interested in getting scored on anything. My public scores me, and that's who I work for. I work for the citizens of Idaho Falls, no special interest group, nobody else. Bottom line.
Any rebuttal?
Yes, Carol, I would love to. I would disagree that it's an obedience score. It's a score just like the American Conservative Union score that lets people know where their representatives are voting. If people care about, they have a tool to go check that out. I appreciate any group or organization that wants to do that and help hold politicians accountable, help make sure that people know whether they're keeping the promises they made. And it's not an obedience score. We have our vote. I listen to my constituents and I vote on my principles. I could care less what any organization or group says. Now, often I align with the Republican Party platform, which is what the ACU and IFF grade on. And so I'm actually proud of that. I have my freedom to choose how I vote, and I vote the way my constituents want based on those things I promised in the campaign.
And a response to that, Marco?
I honestly would do the same with my campaign. I don't really make a whole lot of promises up front because I have to look at each piece of legislation directly and how it affects my citizens that I'm supporting. I don't have any desire to have anybody controlling me in any way. And also, I feel that it is a controlling. These people have been very aggressive with what they're doing sometimes. And I don't align with that at all. And and sometimes I think that people are smart enough to make up their own mind. They don't need an index score to tell them that, how good we are at doing what we are to keep their freedoms alive, to keep a government. I also align with the Republican platform in most things. There were a few, 3 or 4 items on there that I did mention in my platform when I signed that I didn't agree with, and one of those happened to be that I approve of voters and voters choosing who goes to Congress, not the legislature.
We're good? To you, Marco, first. Do you believe that the Idaho Human Rights Act should be extended to cover discrimination in employment and housing on the basis of sexual orientation? So this is basically the add the words fight, which we did not see in this last legislative session, but we have in many others. To make it kind of simple, would you add the words?
Very good question. It is important to me to, yes, add those words. I think it's inconsistent right now where we're at. And it's unfortunate when people are not, or they're discriminated in one community versus another on the same issue. So I do not believe in discriminating against sex, gender, race, or ethnicity, or religious beliefs at all.
Brian?
I also do not believe in any form of discrimination. I follow the commandment to love one another and love everyone equally. However, I would not support the add the words. I'm a conservative Republican. That's been a traditional Republican value and Republican position, and I support that position for many reasons. First of all, the government should not be creating special classes of people, and I worry about creating any special class, and that's exactly what this does. Statistics and data show us that some of the most discriminated people in the workforce and housing are, for example, people that suffer from obesity or males that are under 5'4". There are good statistics that show. So do we create special classes for them? I think everything should be equal. The Constitution of the United States stands for equal rights, and so we shouldn't be creating special classes. I also have never heard of a single issue in the state of Idaho because the people of Idaho are respectful. They love their neighbors. They help their neighbors. And so if there's not a problem, you shouldn't create a problem like we've seen with the bakers in Colorado and issues like that. So no, I would not add the words. I'd be in favor of doing that at this time.
And I also would like to say I don't agree with adding special rights groups as well. They would have equal rights, the same rights that the rest of the people have, and that would be how I would stand on that one.
Follow-up question that I'm going to grant myself, Brian. You've never seen a case of that discrimination happening. We never saw a case of a transgender trying to get on a girls' team in Idaho either, and yet we spent much of the legislative session debating the fairness in sports for women. So I guess my question is, why would you on some bills create a bill where there hasn't been a problem yet, a solution to what has not proven to be a problem, and not with add the words?
So creating the fairness in women in sports bill was being proactive because we have not seen that locally in Idaho, but they've seen it all across the country. There are lawsuits right now of females suing the state because they were forced to compete against a biological male. And so that's a completely different scenario. We're talking equal rights. The Human Rights Act would create a special class of people, but the fairness in sports did that exact opposite. It kept the playing field level for everyone, made sure everyone had equal rights, that female athletes have the same rights and they're able to compete against only females and not biological males who obviously the statistics show have a physiological advantage. And so we were being proactive as the state of Idaho. Again, this is definitely a conservative principle that protects women and protects women's sports. A father of 2 daughters, I was pleased to see that legislation get through because we have to be proactive in those areas.
But not proactive on discrimination in housing or unemployment for the LGBTQ community?
No, I think we need to be proactive with the LGBT community. Again, like I said, we need to love our neighbors, but there's not a problem there, and there is already equal rights. The individuals that fall into those special categories should be able to rent just like anybody else or go into shops. And we already have equal rights. Everyone has the same right in those areas right now, whereas in the female sports issue, it's already, we're seeing nationwide that right to females to compete against other females has been being infringed upon.
Marco, your turn.
We're talking about this LGBT.
Well, let me ask you the exact question as it was written. I just kind of segued into it for Brian. A few weeks ago, Governor Little signed House Bill 500, also known as the Fairness in Women's Sports Act. The measure says that a dispute about an athlete's gender can only be resolved by examining the student's reproductive anatomy, genetic makeup, or normal endogenously 19 product testosterone levels. I have no idea what that one big word is. Does Idaho spend too much, did the legislature spend too much time on a bill that wasn't a problem yet? So a solution that wasn't a problem. And how would you have voted on that transgender bill?
Let me tell you this right now. I would have voted no, and for a couple of reasons. First reason, our Attorney General said it would not be defensible in court. And that alone would be a reason for me to be not liking that bill. I work directly with a lot of those transgender people, and as you know, I know their stories, and they're not harming anyone. And so to create bills like this that are trigger bills really would be offensive to several of that people that I know in that population. Second reason, so first of all, I would be a good steward of our taxpayer dollars and not want to have to defend that in court. Second thing that's real important to note, and I know Mr. Zollinger has daughters as well. I have a daughter. I would not want my daughter in any way have to go and be strip searched because of something of that nature, and that's part of what was in that bill, and it just went a little too far.
Would you like to rebut that, Brian, at all?
Thank you, Carol. I would just like to, the language that you read, I believe that came from a prior version of the bill that was then has been passed. And I'd like to just clarify for the people what that bill does. There's rumors out there that this requires a sex test, basically, if there's a complaint or anything. But the way it's really handled, according to the most recent version of the bill, is that's already on the sports physicals. There are questions on the sports physicals that are required every 2 years for high school athletes by the Idaho High School Association. And so if there was an ever issue with that, it's not an examination of the genitals. It's based on the physical that you've already gotten from a doctor who would ask certain questions about hormones and stuff like that that would make it so the Idaho High School Association would already know who's eligible to play in those sports. And so not really a rebuttal, but just to clarify that, because there were several versions of the bill, and I think the bill that we passed at the end was appropriate in the response that it took and the way it handled that issue.
And one more thing I would say on that, with that authority in the High School Athletic Association's hands, they can handle that in-house. I don't feel there was a need at our level to step up and to do what was done.
While we're on the topic then, and I've forgotten now since we've gone back and forth, whose turn is it?
I believe it's mine.
Is it yours, Brian? How did you vote on the birth certificate, changing your the birth certificate to what you identify with?
I also voted in favor of that bill to not allow people to change the original birth certificate. I think that was, again, a very important issue. Representative Young and Blackfoot did an excellent job with their homework and research and meeting with the attorneys and attorney generals on that issue. And there are very important reasons for the state to know. A person can change their name, a person can change their sex. They still have that freedom, but it's very important for various reasons that the state know what it was originally. Obviously, you think of incidences of identifications and fraud and things like that. And so all that's saying is that the original record, we need to maintain the birth at sex. And so, yes, I supported that bill, and I think it was a very important bill.
Marco?
I would have supported that bill also, so I'm kind of in line with Mr. Zollinger on that bill. The other thing is I would think it's very important that you talk directly to the population it affects when you're making any sort of legislation, and have great conversations with those groups and really listen to their voice, because sometimes that's a tough one. That's a very tough subject, and we need to be paying attention to how we're affecting the people that we're serving.
Carol, can I add just a quick thing? It's
Sure.
not really a rebuttal again, but we talk about changing history and changing historical documents, and that was another compelling argument for keeping the birth certificate the way. Now, if somebody changes their sex later, that can still be noted, but the original is technically a historical document, and we all know how important history is. And so, even these transgender people or people that want to go through a sex change, that might be important someday to their children or posterity to know they were born that way, and they had, if they view it as courage to do that and come out. So I think there's other reasons, and it was definitely not a bill about hatred. It was a bill about protecting historical documents, and for all those compelling reasons, the state had to know what the original birth was.
Good on that one. Going to get completely away from that topic then, and we're moving into the budget and money and what a crisis we're in right now. Let's start with the one that's on the paper here, and then we'll see where the conversation takes us. Marco, I think you're first on this one. How do you feel about raising the minimum wage?
I would never recommend raising the minimum wage. I've seen that happen before in other states and in other places. And when they do that, it caused those of us who were above that cap to have so many problems. They didn't raise us up. They didn't raise, and other things, other products got raised up really quickly. The transportation costs, there were just so many negative things. I would think of other methods to work on that issue.
All right, Brian?
I also would not encourage increasing the minimum wage or ever vote for increasing the minimum wage for several reasons. I think Marco actually outlined those fairly well. We've seen the consequences in areas that done that. But more importantly, the law of supply and demand and capitalism and the market and the demand should dictate what employers pay. I would always encourage employers, and we do a pretty good job in this area. I look at employers and they pay what the value of those services are, and that sets prices. When you raise the minimum wage, you see prices artificially increased. Businesses have to increase prices to cover those wages, and it affects the whole economy. So you really don't accomplish anything, and there are a lot of negative consequences when you do that. So I would not support raising the minimum wage. I think that should be dictated by the free market and the employers based on their profits. And you just hope, and I think people for the most part do a really good job of paying employees what their education and their experience dictates.
It's gonna be tough. You know, you are the same on minimum wage, that you wouldn't raise it. You are not the same on when we should reopen businesses. But if we open them tomorrow, or if we open them in May or June, we got a problem on our hands. You know, we are going to be in a crisis situation just like every other state in the union, budget wise. Brian, I think it's to you first. What are your ideas? What are we going to do to get the economy going? Education already cut 1%. It could get cut some more. Boise State has already furloughed teachers and coaches. What are we going to do?
It's going to be a complex problem, and it's going to take a lot of hard work. I personally, we know from history and from everywhere it's ever happening that tax reduction helps stimulate the economy. Now, the governor has pushed back the deadline to file taxes, which I think has been helpful for a lot of businesses and individuals. But there are several things I think we can do immediately to help people get back to work and give relief to the people. One of those that I've promoted the whole time I've been in office is repealing the grocery tax. This is a tax that people could keep now. That's money people would have in their pockets rather than send it to the government, let them sit on it for years, and then send it back to the people. It's really inefficient, and that repealing the grocery tax would help people now. It would help businesses, especially border businesses, that people maybe leave the state to Washington or wherever to shop for groceries. I also think the business infrastructure, Idaho has some of the highest income. Nationwide, we're about middle of the pack, but we have some of the higher tax rates for businesses and income of any of our surrounding states. So I think we should look at reducing those taxes and invite businesses. If businesses are making money, that gets pushed out down to the citizens.
Pretty hard to answer this in 1 minute, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, you guys will be up there in the legislative session for months, probably, on this very topic. How about you, Marco? Do you have some ideas?
Well, one of them that I think is interesting to note is they've had lots of time to get this grocery tax repealed, and it hasn't been done in several years. It's unfortunate. The other thing is the homeowners exemption tax, where we could have raised the ceiling. Nobody focused their efforts on that this year at the level we could have. Another thing I noticed when I was paying attention to this last session was they had a circuit breaker tax relief request by Senator Dave Lent in our area in Idaho Falls. And nobody, well, I don't say nobody, they didn't pass that tax, which would have helped, or tax relief, sorry, that would have helped relieve tax burdens on some of our vulnerable senior citizens who are lower income and some of our veterans. Those are minimum things, but moving forward, when we're talking about getting the economy back to recovery, we have to focus on two things first. We have to make sure that people have the ability to stay in their homes and have food. Those are two basic needs, and if they don't have that, they can't even go forward with those other things that would be important to support businesses.
Would you like another minute on this topic? Both of you, either of you.
I would definitely like to take some more time on this topic.
Would you go ahead? I'm still concerned. I mean, I really want to know when you get there in January, will we be spending a lot of time on transgender and birth certificates and, you know, issues of that nature? Or do you have the feeling that whoever gets elected is going to go in there and bam, budget?
I definitely
the crisis.
I definitely think people are going to go in there and attack the budget right away and the taxes. And I believe had we been able to stay in session without the pressure of going home so quickly for the COVID-19 pandemic, maybe would have gotten the property tax. The bills, the circuit breaker, the tax freeze. I voted in favor of the tax freeze and had spoken with Senator Lent on the circuit breaker. I supported all of those. And the problem is people need to pay attention in the elections for those that oppose that, because a lot of it was bipartisan. but you need to be electing people that are in favor of these tax cuts. And I believe when we get in session this next time, especially with the economic crisis that we're going to be facing, that this is going to be the number one priority. It should have been the number one priority, and it was with myself and many others. We just couldn't come into agreement how to do that. But all those bills that Marco mentioned, I support, and I think we should get down to those and get them passed for the people.
And would you like to respond to that, Marco?
My question would have been just simple this. Why did they not focus on it in this last session and the other sessions before? It should have been dealt with above these other social issues and I think our Idahoans needed that money and they needed the tax relief right away. I would have represented their voice in that manner and made sure that we were focusing on that. One of the strengths I have is bringing people together. I've been trained. I'm really good at bringing groups of people together to talk about it from every angle and recognizing how we can work together. And when we have differences, communicating and working with those senators who would have possibly opposed that. It's very important to get together and to focus on those tough issues right away. I would also support a special session if necessary, because these budgets have got to be, the taxpayers need to know that their money is going to be there and that these budgets have to be addressed and addressed quickly, and that we can be there for each other and support making this place, Idaho, a better place again and getting back to where we were, getting back on track. And then it's important that in order to do that, we have to be able to handle those budgets quickly.
Carol, can I just add?
It's a huge topic, so yes, I will allow that.
Thank you. And it's really not clearing anything up specific on the topic, but the misperception that we're focusing our time on one bill and not focused on the other. That's why we have committees. Representative Ehart championed the fairness in sports. I really didn't spend any time except listening to my constituents on that. And obviously, we have time to do multiple bills. We debate and handle over 500 bills a year. And so it's not like if we're focused on one important thing, we can't focus on another important thing. And I think the entire makeup of the legislature was focused on the tax relief. There were several bills, dozens of different bills to help these things. And the problem is always getting a consensus, which is how our democratic republic works. And so I think it is important to know that our representatives, Senator Lent, Representative Ehart, in this district, myself, we were on board with every one of those bills, helping draft tax bills at the same time because we can multitask. We weren't just focused on one bill or another. And I think in general, it's just important people understand and make sure that doesn't become a misperception that because we're doing one bill, we're not doing 300 other bills. And so I just wanted to clarify that was a major focus of the legislature this session.
Of course, when you get out of the state of Ada, we are subject to whatever comes to us through the media, through up there. And so sometimes that's part of the problem too. So we think that's all you're talking about because that's all we're hearing about. So what grade would you give the legislature in this last session, Brian?
I would probably give the legislature about a C grade. Because those exact things. We went into the session saying our priority was property tax and tax relief. That was a bipartisan issue, and we didn't get that one accomplished. Like I said, there are many different bills, many different opinions, and reasons I could give for the reason that didn't happen. I think the pressure to leave early without that, the pressure at the end to get everything done because of COVID-19, that maybe prevented it. I think maybe we would have gotten that done. We did pass some good things. The bills we've mentioned today, the birth certificate, the fairness in women's sports bill, some pro-life bills, some trigger bills that would stop abortion if the Supreme Court were to ever change it. There were several good conservative bills that we did pass this year, so I give the legislature some high marks, but solely because of the lack of getting the grocery tax, which the governor wanted. He set $35 million aside for grocery tax relief. So for the fact that we didn't get grocery tax relief or property tax relief, I would have to say the legislature, I would give the legislature a C this year.
Okay, Marco.
And I would probably be really close to him, but I'd probably give him a D+. And I would say mainly because there was things that, like Mr. Zollinger mentioned, the exact same things that we've already talked about. But on the top of that, there was fighting over some simple things like a $1,000 budget difference for voting and to pass a budget. Those kind of things were quite irritating to watch. I think we should have just put people together and made a difference and had a conversation before we went to vote on those issues and just passed those budgets, including some of our own state budgets that were very vital. Our people need to have the ability to do their jobs and do them quickly. And when they're fighting back and forth over silly things like $1,000, that appalled me. I was shocked that they did that. And also some of the social issues that they were focusing on rather than specifically the things our people needed, and that was tax relief.
To you, Marco, I've been doing this for 40 years in the Idaho market, born and raised in Idaho. the reaching across the aisle used to mean the Republicans would reach to the Democrats and vice versa. Reaching across the aisle now seems to have changed its definition between the really hard right Republicans and the more moderate Republicans. So, what will you do if you're a new legislator and elected there to reach across that aisle? Because there seems to be an awfully big divide in just the Republican side.
You are correct. I've been learning that since again, I'm new to the politics, but I've learned here in Idaho, I've been watching the extremes, the two extremes, and they're very extreme. I'm right in the moderate area. I fit in with most Idahoans. I have the ability to connect to people like many, many others and don't. It's very strange. It's a talent I've had since I was a young boy. And it's not to brag, it's just something that I was blessed with because I can relate to multiple different types of people. I relate to people on the poor side. I grew up in a family like that. People that have had drug addictions, people that have been through suicide experiences, people who have been through a lot in their life, all the way up to people who are very doctorate degrees. I've interacted, I'm one of them people who got a master's degree. I've interacted with many, many, many people of different sectors, different people across the country, and I think that that's important to recognize. I could talk to people on both sides, and I'm very good at listening, and I can bring people together in a neutral manner that's necessary.
Ryan?
Thank you. I think that's one of my most important skills. I've always been able to get along with people regardless of their views because I just simply believe that we should love one another and respect everybody's viewpoints. I hate to label anybody. I cringe when I hear somebody call somebody far left, far right. In our Republican Party. If you're following the Republican platform, state and national, then you're a Republican. Ronald Reagan used to say this is a party, the big tent, but recently what we see is, and I don't criticize anybody for what they believe in. What happens, though, is often people campaign as Republicans and on conservative values. And then you look at voting records with the American Conservative Union, who is, like I said, the most accepted score out there. And a lot of the individuals who campaign as conservative Republicans don't keep those promises to the people. So that's the real divide, are the people that keep their campaign promises to people. Everybody campaigns as a conservative Republican. I'm a mainstream Republican because I follow the national and state platforms. I believe in the principles that are the basis of the Republican platform. So I think it's important to work with everybody. And so I don't think there's this big divide in the Republican Party.
I don't think you've been paying attention very much. If you pay attention even right now to this day, what's going on, there is definitely a divide, and it's unfortunate because I signed that. I agree with most of the Republican Party, 95%. There are a few things, and the extreme behavior with some of those people, and including special interest groups who are really trying to control us. I do not have any connection to those special interest groups, nor will I ever. And I saw a letter Mr. Zollinger wrote to the public, and I was shocked that there were 3 or 4 interest groups there. And even though some of them do great things and they are very noble in some of the practices they do and some of the things they stand for, they still have a power and a control over some of the legislators, and that's not who I am. And so I think it's important to note that we need to get people in there who are going to focus on what the people really want.
Carol, I'd like to just talk about that. So he brought up the personal letter that I wrote to the citizens of Idaho Falls. And in that letter, I put that I'm supported by Idaho Chooses Life. The NRA, I've had an A grade. The American Conservative Union, I've had an A grade. Idaho Freedom Foundation, I've had an A grade. Those are not special interests. We can't let people redefine what special interests are. Special interests are groups that are lobbying for one particular issue or to set up a special right for a person or a group or a business. I have never aligned with any special interest. Anybody in Boise will tell you that I have never voted for a single special interest. Those groups are giving voter feedback. Those groups are not special interest. If a group's promoting liberty and freedom and constitutional values like the ACU and IFF are special interest groups, if the NRA and Idaho Chooses Life are special interest groups, then I'm guilty as charged because I will support liberty and the Constitution any day. Those are not special interests. Special interests are businesses like Amazon or Google coming in to set up special laws that benefit them. Groups that are trying to protect our constitutional rights and values, rights to own guns, right to choose life. Those are not special interest, and I will stand with those groups any day, every day.
And I would tell you, the NRA is one of the groups that when I first started this election cycle, I said, I will support the NRA because I've vetted them over the years through my background and all the work I do with guns and all the things I've enjoyed with guns. So that is one group that I agree they're very, very solid. The other groups I don't know so well, and so I could not align myself. And I would tell the voters this: I would vow to you that any time any group comes into my office, I will ask them the questions of where they're funded, and I will post that, and I'll make sure that you're aware and you're alert to who these people are, who they're coming in. I'm going to be very open with you. I want to make sure you know that, so that you know who's coming into my office to talk to me, and we know where they're funded from and what their agenda is. And that's real important, because who's behind those doors is and where their money comes from is very important when they're coming to talk to me about something they want done in Idaho, especially out-of-state groups. Those groups do not belong coming to tell us how to do things here in Idaho.
We don't have time for a lot more questions because you'll want time for your wrap up, but as long as you brought up NRA, is there any kind of gun control legislation you could ever support as a legislator in Idaho? And I've again lost track of who's first. This way? Okay.
There is no gun control legislation right now that I've ever seen that I would support. I fall in line. I'm a gun owner myself. My family, we love to go shooting guns. We love our gun rights. We support the Constitution of the United States. In fact, I am one of those people who extremely believes, this is where I am extreme, I think we should be able to carry our gun to any state in any place we want. Open carry, concealed carry. I'm a big fan of being able to carry a gun when I feel like I want to. I don't have one all the time, but there are times I have one on me and my kids laugh at me. They're like, "Are you carrying today, Dad?" You know, that kind of stuff. And I think that's a right that was put forth for us in our Constitution, and I do not support anything other than what our Constitution says for us.
Thank you. Brian?
I think we're pretty much in agreement on this, it sounds like, because there is not a gun law bill prohibiting any guns or putting any restrictions on guns that I would support. I believe in the Second Amendment as it is written, that it shall not be infringed. I believe the founders meant that. This is for the protection of people. And so it's important that people are able to have those guns and those constitutional, those God-given rights that are protected by the Constitution. I think it's important that people carry. I look at school shootings and things like that, and I wish that there were administrators or somebody that had guns to protect our students. I think it's important. You see around the country a lot of mass shootings prevented because people are carrying guns. I have my gun with me at all times, except if it's a place I'm going to, like a courthouse or a church or even an individual business that doesn't want it. I respect their rights.
How about a debate, Brian?
Say a debate? Had I been asked for some reason not to carry it here.
I just know you're sitting behind me and I can't see what you're doing.
It's just out of habit that I put it on every morning when I leave the door, just in case something were to ever happen. So I'm able to protect my friends, my family, and my neighbors.
I had to tease you.
So you're safe.
It's making me want to go. All right. Next question, and this again is kind of a crisis in Idaho. We have a housing shortage. And both of you, because you're from Eastern Idaho, are very well aware of these big things, fantastic things that might be happening at the INL site in the next few years. If they come to fruition, we got to know where to put the people that have got to come here to help build these reactors, these experimental things. So, Brian, you go first. As a legislator, what can you do?
Great
housing
question.
Shortage, housing crisis.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I hope, we know these reactors are coming. I've been supportive of the INL and that this is happening, so I'm going to continue to cheer and support the INL in every way to make sure that these individuals are able to come to Idaho and that their jobs. As to the housing crisis in and of itself, I've seen some really good ideas around. We know we have the land. I think I trust in businesses. This is a great opportunity for businesses and individuals to start building housing, and we're seeing that all around the valley already, but I think affordable housing, there are things that can be done with zoning laws. There's a gentleman that has been promoting a bill at the Capitol that I really like to allow these tiny homes. I think that's one solution, are these tiny homes that we're seeing kind of take hold across the country, and they're affordable, and whether it's for rent or to purchase. And so that's one idea that I would support to get at affordable home housing prices in there. The other thing we have to do are property taxes. Again, we come back to this issue, and keeping the government should be supplying those things that are proper role of government and necessary, and keep the cost down by trying to provide all these nice things that people want but we don't need. That would keep property taxes down so we could have affordable housing.
Marco?
I've worked on projects before for homeless populations. I understand the occupancy rates and the things that are going on currently right here in eastern Idaho. One of the things that I would do is make sure I'm communicating with our city planners and our county planners, people locally who have the authority to do the work they're going to be doing to do these expansions and to create new homes. We need to talk about what their needs are and any way I can support them at the state level and what that would look like, and make sure that eastern Idaho, we're getting our fair share of the money. That's vital. Like, it's not all going to Boise. We need to make sure we're bringing some of those dollars here, and I would advocate for that, and it would be based on needs and what my community is telling me, and we're doing it as a partnership. The other thing is we have to have variety of options of housing. Sometimes we need to have smaller units that are cheaper so people can be working on their transition plan. It's important to be able to have a transition plan and to be able to work in different places, and we need to be able to also, the second thing I was going to say is make sure our people are well educated so they could take these higher paying jobs and afford some of the properties that we need.
If there's no rebuttal on that, then I think we will wrap that up with the questions part and go right into your final thoughts on this debate and what you'd like the voters to know about you. So who started? Brian, you started, right?
I did,
So
yeah.
Marco, you get to do the first sign off.
Thank you. Well, hey, I'm Marco Erickson, and as you know from my opening statement, I'm not a career politician. I'm a true public servant, and I hope that I can continue to do that for you in different capacity than I've ever done before. This capacity would allow me to serve you and listen to your needs and really do it well. I am going to continue to advocate and serve my community when I'm not at the legislature, just like I always do. Our family and our groups, the things that we do is all about Idaho Falls and always will be. You could trust me. I'm the kind of person, if I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it well. So we'll work together. We'll make things happen. And very contrast, if you look at my career and my opponent, it's very different. Obviously, I spend my time and my energy focusing on helping people. And at times, I've had to pick up the pieces from people who have been affected by medical debt collections. And it's just unfortunate. So we are very contrasted in our professions and what we do for people. And I am a true public servant, and I'm looking for your vote for the Idaho State Legislature, and I hope you can consider me on May 19th.
Brian?
Thank you. Again, my name is Brian Zollinger. I've been the representative for 4 years. I am not a politician. I am a husband, a father, a member of this community who has spent countless hours. I've mentored, tutored thousands of youth in youth sports, Boy Scouts. I've spent my entire life serving the people. That's why I'm in this school board, an unpaid position. I spent my 4 years on the Idaho Falls School Board. That's what I love to do. I love to help people. That's why I'm in this race. I'm proud. I have kept every promise I ever made to a voter, to vote conservatively, to vote along the Republican Party platform, conservative values, smaller government, limited government. I have kept all of those promises, and I will continue to do that. And that's a rare thing. And that's part of the reason I got into politics, is I was frustrated with people always promising to be smaller government, limited government, and then they would go back and vote to increase government. So I've been proud of my voting record. I'm proud to have the endorsement of Idaho Chooses Life because of my pro-life record and the bills that I've sponsored and co-sponsored. I'm proud to have the endorsement of the NRA in the past, of Idaho's Second Amendment Alliance. I'm proud of my Idaho Freedom Foundation and American Conservative Union voting records because they show the people that I keep my promises. I've been a lifelong Republican pushing these. I'm passionate about the principles of liberty, freedom, the Constitution, the Founding Fathers, all of those things that make the Republican Party great. I get along with people. I love to work with people. My cell phone has always been out there. I love the contacts and the relationships that I've been able to build with my friends and neighbors in this district. Talk about compare and contrast. I've been a registered Republican helping the Republican Party long before I ran for office. I've ran for a precinct committee officer. My opponent, on the other hand, just registered as a Republican in 2019. There is no record of him ever voting in a Republican primary or any election in Idaho since at least 2012 when the records go back. And I just think, for the time being, I believe my opponent's a great person. But I don't believe the voters should trust somebody to go back and vote that's never voted in an election since 2012 or registered as Republican until now. So I think there is a big contrast between me and my opponent. We share a lot of the same values, family values, and believe that family is the key to the country. But there's a big difference when it comes to people know me, they know how I'm going to vote because I've always kept those promises and done what I've said. And unfortunately, we don't know him. We'd like to trust him, But we don't know because he's never voted in a Republican primary, at least since 2012, or even registered as a Republican until September.
Okay, no time for rebuttal on that. So you, if you have questions about that, need to get on the gentleman's Facebook pages and ask questions. So thank you so much, guys, for joining us. I know this is difficult. This is uncomfortable. You've done a fabulous job today. I think people will have a much better idea of where you're coming from and what you would vote for. Now, next Thursday, same time, right here, we will have the candidates for Bonneville County Commissioner. They are John Walker, Brady Belliston, and Tom Lurcher. Tom Lurcher was a legislator for a lot of years, and he was also a county commissioner. So that's next Thursday. And just a reminder, okay, the primary is in May on the 19th. You're not going to go to your local gymnasium or whatever junior high to vote. Not this year, okay? Everybody, you have to get an absentee ballot. So you should be getting those right now. You should get online, idahovotes.gov. You need to fill in the form. It's not difficult. And then get your absentee ballot in the mail and fill it out and send it back in. And that is today's lunch-in. Everybody back to work, if you can work, if you can go to work. Goodbye.